What's the best survival story you've ever heard? We bet it's not as mind-blowing as a teenager surviving fourth-degree burns with an unwavering spirit despite losing key parts of his body, or a young lady spending days alone in the rainforest after being the sole survivor of a terrible plane crash. Better hang on to your seats. Before we dive into this list, make sure to leave a like on this video. Also, if you would like to join this month's Star 5 giveaway of a brand new iPhone 14, then all you have to do is subscribe to our channel and watch this video until the end to find and comment the hidden message. Good luck. Number 10. Captain Tim Lancaster. The airplane is one of the most revolutionary inventions of man. With it, you can get anywhere in the fastest way possible. However, if you had an experience like Captain Tim Lancaster, no one would blame you if you decided never to take a plane forever. It all started with the maintenance crew who used the wrong screws to fix the windows of a plane. British Airways Flight 5390 started like any other with 81 passengers and a 6th crew member en route to Malaga. 10 minutes after takeoff, trouble came knocking as the plane hit 17,300 feet. The pressure difference at this altitude was so much that the poorly installed side window flew off, sending Tim headfirst out the window of the cockpit, and his legs caught in the controls, sending the plane flying like a bullet straight for the ground. Thankfully, the co-pilots were able to navigate the plane safely to the ground while it looked like the captain didn't make it. His body stiff from frostbite and his eyes unblinking. Still, he made a miraculous recovery and went back to flying 5 months after he was treated for his injuries. Number 9. Zade the Brave. Not everyone goes through a severe burn accident and comes out with the confidence to go on. This is the story of Zade Garcia, a teenager from Texas who survived 4th-degree burns in what the doctors call a miracle. When Zade was 2 years old, a candle fell into his blanket and quickly lit him on fire. The burns were so severe that he had to be flown from his home in Mexico to a hospital in Texas. Eventually, the doctor saved his life, but not without some sacrifices. Zade lost both his hands, his eyesight, a toe on his right foot, and all the toes on his left foot. Zade is a survivor who learned 9 languages and became an honorary police officer. Number 9. Miracle Man. You're about to find out why Truman Duncan is known as the Miracle Man. You would be too if you survived an ordeal where you were cut clean in half. 40-year-old Truman was working in the railroad yard as a switchman when his life changed forever in June 2006. Truman fell off the train and was caught beneath the wheel of the 2,000-pound train. He had been dragged 75 feet with blood pouring over him, and his body almost sliced through the pelvic bone. When he managed to contact 911, it took another 45 minutes for the paramedics to arrive, during which he had already called his family to tell them he loved them. Over the next 3 weeks after his rescue, Truman was placed in a coma and went through more than 20 surgeries, including amputation and the loss of his kidney. Although he now uses a wheelchair, this brave man returned to work at the very same rail yard, this time in the office. Number 7. Julian Kopka. At just 17, Julian Kopka was a sole survivor of a horrifying plane crash and an even more terrifying 10 days alone in the dense Peruvian rainforest. But it took an incredible amount of bravery for her to survive this impossible situation. On Christmas Eve in 1971, Julianne was on Lanza Flight 508 with her mother when a wild thunderstorm destroyed the plane and sent her traveling fast to the ground, still strapped to her seat. She lost consciousness just as she hit the ground and woke up the next day. Realizing she was all alone in the rainforest, what followed was 10 days of trudging through the wilderness with a broken collarbone, deep cuts on her legs, and a maggot-infested wound on her right arm that she treated with a can of gasoline found in a hut. After spending the night there, Julianne woke up to voices of men who initially thought she was a water goddess. She explained her ordeal in Spanish and was taken back to civilization, where she grew to cherish the jungle that protected her. Number 6. Greg Rasmussen. British-born animal conservationist Greg Rasmussen took off into the skies in his single-engine plane to track a rhino, one of the world's highly endangered mammals. This seemed like a simple enough task, but that day didn't go as planned. Soon after his plane was in the air, a heavy wind broke one of the wings and he crashed heavily into the ground, surrounded by predators ranging from a lioness to hyenas as he nursed his broken legs. This was the beginning of the end, or so it seemed. Despite being badly injured and dehydrated, Greg survived 27 grueling hours of being vulnerable and exposed by hitting the aluminum hull of his wrecked plane with a stick. This scared off the hungry animals until he was found and rescued. After about 100 operations, Greg was back on his feet and walking, this time 3 inches shorter. Number 5, Helen Claiborne. In 1963, Helen Claiborne was stranded in the Yukon wilderness for 49 days, surrounded by nothing but snow and without emergency supplies. She was only 21 years old at the time and decided to fly with an amateur pilot to reduce the cost of her flight to San Francisco and eventually Hong Kong. It felt like nothing could go wrong, but they definitely did. Not long after the pilot, Ralph Flores, took to the skies, they ran into a snowstorm and crashed into the mountains and trees around the Yukon Territory. Despite Helen suffering a broken left arm and Ralph sporting a fractured jaw, the pair survived in a crazily cold weather with the little food that they had left. Several days after the search for them had been called off, Chuck Hamilton was flying over their location when he spotted an SOS sign in the snow. And this was the end of their terrible ordeal. Helen survived and lived until the lovely age of 76. Number 4, Patricia Borges. The thought of chocolate should bring a warm and fuzzy feeling, but that won't be the case for Patricia Borges for a while. Patricia worked at a Pennsylvania chocolate factory, which in itself is not a bad idea, except it almost ended in her being sent on a journey of no return. In April 2003, there was a strange smell of gas in the air which Patricia reported to her supervisor but was ignored. Bad idea. Barely 30 minutes later, a huge explosion tore the factory up into shreds and set Patricia on fire. In a panic, she ran and the floor crashed underneath her, sending her into a huge vat of liquid chocolate. The good news was that this was enough to put out the fire. The bad news was the fall broke her legs and she couldn't climb out. Trapped, she screamed for help. Water from the firefighter's hose helped her get up from the basement floor, where she was found freezing cold and battered. Thankfully, she got out of this ordeal alive. Number 3, Poon Lim. How long do you think you can last alone at sea? Poon Lim's answer would be 133 days because he actually lived it. In November 1942, the SS Ben Lomond was torpedoed by a German submarine, and Poon Lim was unlucky enough to be aboard and stranded in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. However, he was indeed lucky to be the only survivor out of 55 crew members, even though that meant spending several months lost at sea. As the ship sank, Poon Lim was able to grab a life jacket and jump overboard before the explosion. He survived on meager rations and eventually had to improvise to hunt for food in the water. It gets even crazier when you realize that Poon Lim had no idea how to swim properly. Eventually, 3 Brazilian fishermen rescued him in April 1943, after he had lost a lot of weight and could barely move around. He also earned a world record for the longest time spent at sea. When Poon Lim was asked what he thought of his world record, he simply said, "I hope no one will have to break it." Number 2, Sambora. Sambora's story is similar to that of John Jones, who was stuck in the Nutty Putty cave. However, the difference between both stories is that Sambora made it out of the cave in Chankra Mountain alive, even though it took 4 days of being stuck without food or water. The Cambodian man was collecting bait droppings, an item that had become lucrative as a fertilizer in the country. However, his torch slipped through the rocks and he fell into the narrow cave while trying to retrieve it. He was stuck there for 4 days while his family searched everywhere possible, and his brother finally located him. It took about 200 rescuers and 10 hours to destroy parts of the cave. Some Bora survived injuries to his head, knee, and chest, but definitely won't be hunting in that mountain again as it was banned. Number 1, Nita Juggy. 12-year-old Nita Juggy had been experiencing seizures, headaches, and general weakness for more than 2 years, and the cause remained a mystery to her family. As the headaches got worse, she became paralyzed down to the right side of her body and couldn't carry out basic functions. Finally, she had an MRI scan that revealed something shocking. A tapeworm larva had been living inside a cyst in her head for almost 10 years. Apart from being disgusting, the cyst could have burst at any moment, but shockingly stayed intact for that long. The doctors revealed that she could have eaten this through contaminated food when she was younger. Luckily, they were able to remove the huge cyst after about 2 hours of surgery, and Nita had gone to live a normal life. And that's a wrap on today's video. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe and give us a like. And don't forget to turn on your push notifications so you never miss a video from Star 5. Thanks for watching.